All right, Jack, we're back to you for the rest of your report.
That was all we were highlighting for you today. Just a reminder, though, in that July meeting, we kind of talked about it already a little bit, but I just want to make sure you realize there were some scheduling issues that led us to those dates originally, but it's a Monday and a Tuesday. So just want to make sure that's locked in your minds because it's coming after a holiday weekend. And
We should expect two
Yeah.
long, full days.
I think so. Yeah, it probably would have been. I don't want to make it sound. We want to make this positive, a positive experience. But
I wanna be
originally
practical,
probably
too.
a day and a half, but probably 2 full days.
I want to
yeah.
be practical
Yeah,
too.
but it is Monday, Tuesday,
At least it's not flights out of Sacramento late on a Friday afternoon. That'll be
and so
good.
and we do need obviously a quorum for investment. So we want to make sure we really get all the schedules right. That's all. And then
Are we expecting people to come in Monday morning,
well, yeah, yes, you'd be starting at 9 o'clock on Monday.
starting at 9?
I
So we
mean-
might have people that need to come in Sunday night. Okay.
Yeah, that's the hard part about that.
I'll be here already, I think. Alrighty. Moving on then. Ed, why don't you go into long-term care for us, please?
Sure. You bring up the presentation? There we go. So this is an item that some of the board members asked us to sort of bring up. And it's really nothing that the board or that CalSTRS has any direct responsibility for, but obviously affects our members. And there's been a lot of concern about what is going on with the long-term care program. So
Obviously, that picture was taken before they received
their letters.
their renewal.
Sure.
You said why our members are affected by this.
Well, I can talk about that now. Basically, the long-term care program that CalSTRS administers, which was set up in the 90s, the statutory authorization for the program basically opened up that program to effectively all public employees in California. So not only is it CalSTRS members and CalPERS members, but, firemen in Salinas and any place else. It doesn't matter what retirement system they're in. If they're a public employee, they can be in the long-term care program, and their families as well. So it's a fairly broad population. But there's been some issues with long-term care generally, and specifically on the CalPERS side of their program, which our members are now starting to get some communication around. And obviously, there's a lot of anxiety because it's been closed for a couple of years, and now they're seeing being notified about some upcoming premium increases that are quite substantial. So I thought it'd be helpful to sort of provide a little bit of background about long-term care generally, how the market's been operating, and then talking a little bit about what is going on at CalPERS, and what the choices are that our members are facing. But again, there's really nothing that this board has any responsibility for, other than the fact it's our own. Some of our own members are affected by that. So in terms of long-term care, it's becoming much more common. About 70% of those who are age 65 or older will need long-term care at some point in their lives. This year, about 9 million people in the country who are over the age of 65 will need long-term care, and by 2020, that number is expected to increase to 12 million people. And you can see that the cost of long-term care, it can be fairly expensive. This gives you a range of costs ranging from an assisted living facility all the way to a private nursing home, where it can range between $42,000 and almost $94,000 a year. So it gets quite expensive, and people probably don't have the resources on hand to pay those kinds of expenses. So long-term care insurance is there to sort of cover some of the activities of daily living, and those are things like bathing, dressing, eating, making transfers. If they can't do two of those things, then they are typically eligible for long-term care that's tax qualified, meaning that they don't have to pay income taxes on the benefits received from the long-term care insurance. And these are costs that are not generally covered by health insurance or by Medicare. They are covered by Medicaid, but there's an implication of doing that. So the basics of long-term care is the issue is that you basically get what's called a daily benefit amount, and that's an amount of money that is there to cover the cost of your long-term care service after you've achieved some elimination period in which you pay all the costs yourself. So, for example, you have a 30-day elimination period, and a $250 a day benefit, then after you've been eligible for 30 days, then you'll start getting a $250 a day to pay your benefit. On average, the rule of thumb is that your benefit should be able to pay about 70% of your cost of nursing care, and given the cost of nursing care in California, 70% of that is about $170 a day. So, but the way it actually works is, I mean, there's sort of two kinds of benefits, particularly what our members are dealing with. One is lifetime benefits, which means that you'll get whatever that daily benefit amount is for the rest of your life as long as you're continuing to need the services. Or there's a defined coverage. And to give you the example of, if you have a $250 a day daily benefit amount and you have a 6-year plan, what that means is that you will get an amount, you can spend up to $250 a day for 365 days in a year for 6 years, or you basically have $547,500 over your lifetime to pay to cover your long-term care costs after all the elimination periods. So it's not that in this particular plan, for example, after you've been in a nursing home or getting services for 6 years, you get cut off. It's when you actually expend that dollar amount that you get, that it finally is eliminated, that you've exhausted your benefits. It's very common for benefit amounts to increase annually it's called inflation protection, although it's not based on the rate of inflation. It'll be a flat, say 5% each year. That benefit amount will go up. That benefit, even before you receive a benefit, that benefit amount will go up, and then while you're receiving benefits, it could continue to go up. In other cases, rather than being an automatic benefit increase, it's an option that's available to you. So that each year you may have, say, do you want to have a benefit increase, and then your premium goes up accordingly. And if you don't opt into it, you may lose your ability to get future benefit increases. But you sort of have two options to address the fact that the cost of benefits will increase over time. There's different categories of coverage. There's coverage that only covers you if you're in a nursing facility or a residential care facility. There's other coverage that only covers you if you're receiving home health care or adult day care or personal care, things where you're not in an institution. And then there's comprehensive long-term care, where it covers you regardless of either one. So in terms of, there's a particular kind of policy which CalPERS participates in called partnership policies, and it's something that's authorized. It's a program of the Department of Health Services, and it's authorized in statute. And what it does, the primary purpose of it is to shelter assets from Medi-Cal rules. So I said earlier that Medi-Cal will cover the cost of long-term care, but what happens is that if you get Medi-Cal coverage, if Medi-Cal ends up paying those benefits, that what they will end up doing is having your assets depleted before you can utilize that, because they just to make sure that you're not, that you aren't using taxpayer resources when you have resources on your own. What the partnership policy does, though, is protect an amount of those assets from having to be depleted. So an amount equal to what it is you get in benefits. So if, for example, your maximum benefit is, say, $500,000 based on your average daily benefit amount and how long that benefit's in effect, then if you're in a partnership policy, then you can you can shield $500,000 of your assets from having to be depleted before you're eligible for Medi-Cal. And so that's the primary value of a partnership policy. It also is subject to minimum standards set by the Department of Health Services, and as I said, CalPERS policies are available as a partnership arrangement. As far as the regulation of long-term care, the Internal Revenue Service regulates it from the standpoint of whether it's a tax-qualified plan, of which CalPERS is a tax-qualified plan. Partnership policies are also regulated by the Department of Health Services. And then as far as private insurers, because there are private companies out there who do provide long-term care, the sales and the rate increases have to be approved by the insurance commissioner before they can take effect. CalPERS rates are not regulated by the insurance commissioner. Those are set entirely by the CalPERS board. So in terms of the CalPERS long-term care program, as I said, it is a tax-qualified plan, so people do not have to pay income taxes on the benefits they receive from it. It is not regulated by the insurance commissioner. It is controlled entirely by the CalPERS Board of Administration, although there are partnership policies that meet the standards of the Partnership for Long-Term Care. And as I said before, essentially any public employee and specified parts of their family are eligible to purchase a long-term care policy from CalPERS. One of the issues, this is a relatively new industry, and it actually became more or less created in the 1990s when CalPERS started their program as well. And Moody's did an assessment back last September, and they looked at the market, and they made they reached a lot of conclusions that are pretty similar to the conclusions that CalPERS has experienced as well. One of which is that in the 80s and 90s, it was a new market. There was some expectations of experience that were much more optimistic than turned out to be the case, and so as a result of that, the prices that were charged for the policies were too low for them to sustain a profitable business in the private sector. So the legacy policies were mispriced. New policies that have been issued do a better job of limiting risk by having more strict underwriting. Having higher rates. The rate regulations are obviously, the rates are obviously subject to some regulation, so they have to be justifiable from the insurance commissioner's standpoint. But part of the problem is that when there were substantial rate increases, that led to a lot of people dropping their policies unless they really needed it, and so you ended up with a lot of adverse selection. And so the people who were needing the benefits the most kept them, and the people who were perhaps didn't feel they needed the benefits, dropped them, and just made the situation worse. The benefits now are less generous than they used to be, and there's a lot less of sales than what was anticipated. So the experience that CalPERS is facing is not unique to CalPERS. The rest of the industry is facing that as well. The federal government tried to address that issue with long-term care in the Affordable Care Act, the healthcare reform program that was enacted a couple of years ago. There was a provision of the act called the CLASS Act to establish a federal long-term care program. Back in 2011, the analysis that was done by the federal agency responsible for it determined it wasn't viable, and it was ultimately repealed. Since that time, the Commission on Long-Term Care has been established, and they're required to submit a report on how to address the situation in September. So again, there are efforts being made to try to address the market problems that have existed for long-term care, but in the meantime, CalPERS is sort of facing the situation that they're in. That program was established in 1996. It's entirely a voluntary program, so people decide whether or not they want to be in it or not. It's entirely self-funded, so the only money that is available to pay benefits are the premiums that are paid and the returns on the investment of that money. It is not for profit. They have a third-party administrator to actually administer the program and operate the call center, but it is an entirely sort of self-sustaining program, or that's how it's developed. So in terms of what's going on now, given the market situation that's existed, that there will be a series of rate increases taking effect, one of which takes effect this year, another one next year, and then the most significant one in 2015 for those policies that were purchased between 1996 and 2004. And it's only a certain policies that are affected by this. One of them is the lifetime policy that either has or does not have built-in inflation protection, but about 70% of the policies that are out there are the lifetime policies. So that's why there are so many people affected by the rate increase. In addition to that, the policies that are the 6 or 3 year policies that have inflation protection are also going to experience that rate increase. So the overwhelming majority of the policyholders would experience a rate increase unless they decide to make a change in their coverage, which is an option that's being made available to them. This gives you a sense in terms of the first plan of policies, sort of how they're distributed. About, as I said, you can see about 70% of the policies in this first group are lifetime policies. The next largest group are 3 year policies, a small number of partnership policies, and then the rest are the 6 year policies. So as you can see why there's so many people affected by that. They're creating a new program. They shut down the program and didn't take on any enrollments a couple of years ago. They're going to open up a new program at the end of this year without any closing date, so it's sort of an open enrollment situation. There will be a 10-year policy available to them. They are getting rid of the lifetime policy, so there'll be no new lifetime policies written for the program. And there's also a bill that is been introduced that would expand the population that's eligible to the program to include adult children of public employees, as well as their registered domestic partners. So where things are right now is that there are communications that are going out to the members, to the participants, letting them know what's going on and giving them some options about how to deal with the situation, to either elect to continue their policy and pay the premium increase. They could elect to go to the 10-year, the 6-year, or the 3-year policy and probably not pay a premium increase and then perhaps even get a premium decrease. They don't have to go through any additional underwriting to do that. They would just, their policy would be converted without having to requalify. They have quite some time to make the decision around the 2015, which is the big 85% increase that they're going to be experiencing so they can't avoid that. And just to give some metrics without giving any advice about what people ought to do is that the experience in the market and the experience that CalPERS has is that the average policyholder utilizes long-term care services an average of about 3 years. And in CalPERS' experience, about 99% of them utilize the services for under 10 years. So that would suggest that reducing the policy probably wouldn't give the overwhelming majority of the membership much exposure, but it's a risk that they would be taking to change their policy for sure. And that's a decision that the individual policyholder is going to have to make. And there is information that's being provided to them around their choices of what it would cost for that individual to make these other choices so they can make an informed decision. We had some discussion around it yesterday in Client Advisory Committee. There's a certain amount of frustration about that. It's just a very confusing topic. They aren't quite sure they know enough to get the information to make an informed decision. I'm assuming that CalPERS has probably heard that from a lot of their policyholders. They are probably watching this right now, so they can sort of hear that again. But it's a thing that CalPERS is spending a lot of time trying to address the problem. But at some point, the people are going to have to make a decision about how they want to handle that program. So be happy to answer any questions that people might have about what's going on. As I said, there's really nothing that we have any role in it other than just sort of letting people know what's going on and sort of directing them to the appropriate resources for them to make a decision.
Grant?
Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for that presentation. I thought it was really good. I think it's very appropriate. I watched a legislative hearing several weeks ago, and there were a number of CalSTRS members there, so it's obviously a concern for our members. I think you've hit most of the highlights. Your presentation was quite good. The Moody's slide showed that the problem that the CalPERS program faces is a problem that the industry has of a relatively new product. It wasn't priced right. And so I think the price increases for the CalPERS program have been pretty much in line with the industry. You also mentioned that this is a program that is funded completely by member premiums. So there's no other backstop. So if the pricing is not right, the benefits can't be paid. And the other point you made is that there are ways to avoid that 85% increase. And I appreciate you mentioning that the average time and benefit is about 3 years or less is the experience. So, I'm no expert. I can't advise people on what to do, but I think everybody needs to take a look at what the right level benefit is for them. But the one issue that I wanted to raise is we get questions all the time about will that benefit, will the premiums go up? And CalPERS is making it clear that they hope not. But it is a possibility that it could go up. But I think what's different now is the CalPERS program has a number of years of experience under its belt, so better experience to price the product. And also the investment return assumption is much more conservative, which is part of why the premiums are going up. But I think that also gives some assurance that the premium should be more stable. So, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what I have heard from our members, and this is something that we talk a lot here when we do changes to any of our programs, is notification, the length of time members have to choose to make those decisions, the information that goes to them that informs them of the decision they have to make, and then a grace period if they've made the decision, learn more, and then are able to change it. From what I understand, is that time period has been very much condensed for CalPERS, that the choices that they have to make, they've had to make in a very short time without a whole lot of educational materials that they can use to make an informed decision. Do you have anything that you want to weigh in on
Well,
that?
and maybe sort of turn Ellen and Maurizio, who wrote the item, can sort of help out if necessary. My understanding is that there are some decisions that they need to make now with respect to the 5% increases that are taking effect, but the big increase doesn't take effect till 2015, and I think they have quite a bit of time, and maybe Grant can sort of verify that. They have quite a bit of time before they have to decide whether or not they're going to be subject to the 2015 rate increase.
Can you, I understand that it's a PERS program.
Right.
But can we get that information? So it's in
absolutely.
writing, make sure it's on our website. So if our members are turning to us about it,
Mm-hmm.
because they're eligible by being a public employee,
Right.
and having, a pension through us, so they're able to get that information. So we're providing the education too? Already.
Yeah, I just think, and we certainly want to provide as much information as we can. We just need to be careful that people don't come to us for anything with
understand.
respect to the program, because we're not in a position of helping them out that way.
Yeah. A link, maybe a link to
Yeah.
something that they have or something. Grant?
I was just gonna add, I forget what the deadline is, but if somebody does not make a decision, stays in the lifetime or the inflation protected this year, they could come back next year, make that change. And so
Right.
they'd make that change well ahead of the 2015.
Yeah, apparently they have a couple of options, a couple of choices.
Sal, you were covering the first one.
I was, sorry.
All right, so Jennifer, I know you were meeting there. Who was up first? All right, Dave?
Dave Walrath, representing California Retired Teachers Association. Thank you for the item. Thank staff. It's really, really good information, and that has been part of the issue, is having good information out. Doing this for your members, we appreciate it tremendously. I'm not here to beat up on CalPERS. It is their program, not your program. Your provision of information, I believe, is the appropriate role. And as you keep doing that, that will help us and our membership so they can make informed decisions. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Sal?
Salvia Senor, Association California School Administrators, and while we represent superintendents, we also represent school principals and also classified management. And I can tell you that the calls that I had received over the last number of months around this topic have come across all of those classifications. And one of the things that, as Dave indicated, that we want to also echo is a lot of our members were asking, what does CalSTRS think about this? Have they given their perspective? And so the fact that the staff at this organization has been able to provide some information to the field, and this item in particular, I think it's helping our members across the state make some, decisions that they'll feel a lot more comfortable having more information in front of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Jennifer?
Good morning, Jennifer Baker with the California Teachers Association. I just want to echo the comments that were made by our colleagues. We're very appreciative of not only the fact that you're working to make sure that your members, also our members, are informed about the topic, but if I could add, what's of particular importance is the quality and integrity of the work and communication you're providing is absolutely unparalleled and has really helped to articulate this issue in a way that our members can understand. And I think that's been one of the primary concerns that a lot of folks have had. And we really want to thank you, because this is not only a fiscal issue to our members, this is also an emotional issue, because this has a major impact on the quality of life of retirees that are already on a fixed income. And we really want to thank you for the respect and integrity that you've communicated to our members on this issue, because it helps us to make sure that at the end of the day, they're going to be educated. And we want to thank you, because we've been actually using your materials to help clarify this issue with our members. So thank you to you, and thank you also for the quality of work that your staff has done on this issue.
Thank you, Jen. Could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, Monica Nestrosa with the California Federation of Teachers. As my counterparts before me have said, thank you to the board, thank you to the staff. This item is extremely important. We've also been inundated with calls from our membership, from your members who have asked, what do we do? As others have noted, a real problem, a cause for the problem that we have before us has been information. Has there been quality information, reliable information? And what we've been able to provide via CalSTRS is really high quality information so that, we're at the point where we're at, but at least moving forward, educators will have high quality information when they're making long-term care policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Pat?
Pat Geyer, retired teachers. I just wanted to say of the members that I've talked to, their big issue is how much it's going to cost them a month. And able to see a bigger picture and make a more informed decision. We really appreciate that because they're saying to me, oh, this is going up, $10 or $20 or $30 a month. Can I afford it or not? And they need to look beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Noelle Krenkel from United Educators of San Francisco, retired. I'm also involved with the grassroots group, which happens spontaneously with people who receive these notices. We have hundreds of people who are involved with our networking, and the responses, as you can imagine, are fairly negative, not even fairly, very negative. But I think it's important to know how the groupings occur with the responses that we're receiving, and most of the people that we have communications with are actually CalSTRS people, and I recommend that you do keep a wall between CalPERS and CalSTRS on this issue. One is that group who are just really confused. You're dealing with people who are in their 80s. Some of them are not totally capable in terms of the cognition to make these decisions or understand what's occurring. And a lot of them are living on very limited incomes. And for some of them, the increases are double. It can go from $300 to $600 or $700 a month. It varies. Another group are those who are expressing hopelessness and despair, which is sort of a disturbing situation that I think is happening with older people, is that they're making comments, well, I'm glad I'm at the other end and I'm ready to check out. Another group are those who are asking about assisted suicide. And their concern is not so much about what I'm going to suffer in a situation of dementia or whatever situation they might be in, but their concern is what's going to happen to the assets that I acquired for my heirs. And might I just better off just taking that step and eliminating my existence so that they can benefit rather than a nursing facility? That is disturbing. And then the fourth category are basically those who are currently in transitions. I work with older people in the Roseville, Rockland, Granite Bay, Citrus Heights area. And they're older women in their 80s and some in their 90s. And some of these people are currently going through transitions with Eschaton and other nursing facilities, and they're in and out. And they're not in a situation to understand how this is affecting them, but they know it's a problem. Many people, I don't know if you're aware, don't even have advanced directives. They don't have wills. They don't have living trust. That's actually the norm. So these people are really a vulnerable, very vulnerable population. And actually, we're really disturbed that CalPERS couldn't really think outside the box on this issue because there's a lot of other concerns in what other industry providers have done with this. One thing that we had really hoped was that CalPERS would make the disclosure that this is not under the jurisdiction of the California Insurance Commissioner. Had that disclosure been made, many people have said they would have never purchased the policy in the beginning. So I think that is a real, real concern. Thank you.
Finish up at all? No. Alrighty, any questions or comments from the board? Alrighty, we are 5 to 12. Let's go ahead and do our 2 consent agenda items, and then that will finish our action items. And then we'll go to closed session and then go to lunch. Is that without objection? Alrighty, so that's item 12, And 12A is the Audits and Risk Management, Board Governance, and Ledge Committee, and I was looking at this really quickly. I think the Audits and Risk Management can go into the record as written from their open session, but Michael, if you want to tee in, I think Board Governance actually has a recommendation for us. Okay?
The Board Governance Committee met on Thursday, June 6, 2013. The committee considered the revised gift policy and requested additional modifications to the policy for the next reading. The committee then discussed the proposed insider trading policy for investments and recommended the policy be adopted by the board. The committee also discussed the fiscal year 2013-2014 work plan and requested additional research and analysis be presented at the next committee meeting. So by direction of the committee, I move to adopt the proposed insider trading policy.
All right, are there any questions for Michael on that? He's moved it from the committee, it doesn't need a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? So approved. Then we also have on the Ledge Committee,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Harry still on the line?
Harry, you out there? Somehow we've lost Harry. Maybe when we went to break. Okay, Grant?
Do I need to read the?
You can just move the position if you would like. You don't have to read all of
Okay.
it.
So by direction of the committee, I move to adopt an opposed position on HR 1629 Nunez and S 779 Burr.
Okay, that's coming from the committee. No second. Is there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Abstentions?
Aye.
We've moved that position. The investment committee,
It's 2 months, but we don't have to take action.
okay, so we'll just put those forward as done. I just noticed it wasn't on the agenda, so. We don't have an issue with that, do we, Brian? Oh, it's on 13, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, and appeals did not meet. So we'll take 12 and 13, I guess, at the same time. Approval of the minutes, if you will look at your minutes, please. I do have one change that I'd like to bring before the board. It's on TRB 94. And I just want to clarify number 2, this third sentence. It talks that we reviewed the proposed insider trading policy and requested language. And the last part of that sentence says, but also clarifies that the policy applies to all asset classes and equally prohibits private and system gains. I think what we were asking was whether it did include both. So I would like to add, before equally prohibits, the words whether it equally prohibits private and system gains, then I think it more accurately reflects what our ask was. So without objection, we'll make that amendment. Jack, on the board member education, Sharon has canceled. Do we need to inform the board of that?
It'll be formally written into the education report next month because we actually document the expense change and everything in the budget.
Okay, so we'll do that. Alrighty. So with those changes to 12 and 13, I'd entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Yes. Alrighty. So that concludes our action items. What I'd like to do now is go into closed session, then we'll go to lunch. Jack, what do you think? 12:15, 12:30? I mean, 1:15, coming back into open session.
Yeah, closed session's probably about 30.
And then another 30 minutes for lunch at least? Okay, let's go ahead and come back at 1:15.
Okay, sounds perfect.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
That means you'd be done today by 2.
The preamble to the act. you'll see the underlying principle is meaningful opportunity to participate or observe in meetings. And for meaningful, it means you have to know that the meeting's coming up and you have to have access to participate in the meeting. And so as you all are aware of Bagley-Keene, the default is that everything's open and transparent and done in the public. The exceptions to Bagley-Keene are very narrowly construed. And so it's the meeting, sometimes that's a question that comes up, is what is a meeting? A meeting is any time a group that would constitute a majority of the smallest committee of the board gets together and discusses something within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, or basically within the ordinary business of the board. And for your purposes, that's any time there's more than two discussing an item that's a subject matter of a board meeting. Or not just a board meeting, all of the subject matter of the board. So meetings, meetings is, the definition of meetings has been expanded. Social media now enters into it. So a meeting, obviously, this is a meeting, but a meeting could be a telephone conference. Meeting could be an email between two board members with a CC to the third. An email could be, a meeting could be an email from a board member to a staff member that's then forwarded to another two board members. It could be, so they're serial meetings, or they're meetings by accumulation, if you will. There's any way that a communication on a subject matter is communicated to more than one other member of the board. Also, if staff serves as the hub of the wheel on a decision. So if I seek the opinion of one of the board members on a particular issue, and I seek the opinion of another board member, and I relay that to subsequent board members, then you're having a meeting through an intermediary. And the one I want to spend a little bit more time on is communication through social media and technological devices such as text or email. But I also think that it's important, blogs or anything where you post your thoughts on anything on a subject matter. So you could have a meeting on a blog or a website, or you could, if more than two members of the board posted their thoughts on something that had to do with the subject matter, that could constitute a meeting. Could be text. It could be, you could text two board members, or one board member could text the other and then forward it to another. It's in somewhat related. There was a really interesting case. I think I sent you a brief on it. The San Jose, it applies to Public Records Act, but it is really interesting because it does have implications, I think, under Bagley-Keene. And that was where members of the city council were texting back and forth about a developer who, there was an item on the agenda of the city council having to do with a development project by that developer. And so when the Public Records Act request came, they asked for these text messages. They asked the city, and the city said, well, we don't have control over those. Those are on the board members' private devices. And the judge found no, that because the board members work for the city, therefore it's the city's responsibility to produce those text messages. This is a Superior Court case. It's up on appeal. It has limited precedential value, but I do think that may very well be the way that the courts are going to come down eventually. The fact that something's on a private device, if you're conducting public business, that would constitute something that would have to be produced. The reason why I think it's relevant under Bagley-Keene is because if there's text messages happening within a board context, in other words, within a board meeting, between board member and the member of the public, board member and member of staff, or board members with each other, that communication is part of the meeting and needs to be part of the public record. So that's where I think some of those things are coming to fore. Now, this one's coming in through the PRA, but there have been some cases throughout the United States under the Freedom of Information Act, where that has been held, that the texting on private devices between board members or board members and members of the constituency or interest groups during a board meeting is part of the record of the board meeting. So again, it prohibits, from the statutory language, prohibits those communications when the purpose is to discuss, deliberate, take any action on any item of business, which is when the subject matter of the board. So you can see discuss is a pretty broad term. It does, however, exclude, there are some exclusions, conversations between a board member and a member of the public or the staff. But obviously, the second part of that is, of course, that you can't use staff as a conduit. No board member could use staff as a conduit to pass on their position on an item. Conferences or seminars that involve issues of general interest, providing information to members of the legislature, and it should be on their purely social occasions, such as a board dinner and those type of things. For committees, they follow the same rules as a full board, and this, I'm sorry, this is a misstatement. It's a majority of the committee is imputed to the full board. It's not the quorum, it's the majority. Because a quorum is the majority of those members present for our purposes, and it really is the majority. Appeals, all communications between members of the appeals committee or the board, because the appeals committee is a delegated committee of the board, with staff regarding a matter to be heard, must be communicated in the open meeting or in writing accessible to the public. In other words, there's no ex parte communication between staff and board members on any particular case. Going back to the meaningful opportunity to participate, the standard advance notice is 10 days prior. The place has to be specified, and there has to be a description of the business to be discussed on the agenda. The Bagley-Keene standard is a description that's specific enough so folks know what's going to be discussed, but nothing 20 words or less. We go an extra step, and we generally provide the materials to be discussed. They could be provided at the time of the meeting. But we attach the material, so we're very good at providing advance notice of specifically what we're going to talk about. The time, of course, has to be clearly stated. Ending times. The ending times can be approximate, which we do here. If we state the reasons, which we do in our notice, if we have one meeting follow another, we let folks know in advance that the one meeting will continue. And then the requirement then is that we announce at the end of the one meeting when the next one's going to start. These requirements are, I think, pretty self-explanatory for meaningful notice. Folks need to know where it's going to be held. If there's a board member participating via technology, which is nice that it's not just phone, it's technology, that that be in a place that's physically accessible to members of the public, so that in order to participate fully in a meeting, that we can't do it from home unless home is fully accessible to the public, and that includes ADA compliance.
Brian, knowing that Harry was going to participate from the Glendale office and talking about, public needs to have the same access, but do they need to have the same access as the public would have in this room? And I mean, the ability to ask us questions or to have statements from the public, do we need to make sure that we make that available remotely?
That should be available
Okay.
remotely. And in the instances that we have done it, I'm not aware of any member of the public attending, but that is something, and that's a very good point. We should probably make that clear when we have anybody appear by phone.
I know at CTA's last state council, there was a question about it. The person that was not going to be able to make it up here and was thinking about attending in Glendale. I don't know if she's there or not, But I was just wondering if she had a comment, if we'd be able to facilitate that.
That's why we prefer Glendale as the remote office, because it's fully ADA accessible and has all the technology. When you post personal addresses or something like that, then we get into issues of your home being accessible or the public being there. So yeah, that's why we really do want our official offices, ideally. Yeah, we are, Mary watches that.
As I said, a brief description, but there has to be, the standard is to let folks know, but the agenda, which we find sometimes is a limitation, the agenda must contain everything that's going to be discussed. So we can't go off agenda because the public has not had notice. But we can include in requests for information, which is your practice. If there's a new item or there's something for future meetings, you do catch that at the end for a request for information. But again, if the purpose is a meaningful opportunity to participate in the meeting, obviously it has to stay on the agenda. And this basically says the same thing. It's so the things that enter into the board members' consideration on a particular topic, assuming it's not a closed session item or a privileged item, whatever goes into that decision-making process needs to be, if it's not privileged, needs to be made available to the public. Generally, that's the board book, and all of that is provided on the website. Sometimes things don't make it into the board book, and then we provide that on the website and copies here for the audience. And that's what the rest of this says. And certainly on request by a member of the public. Access, we talked about that. There is, the notice has to be available in alternative formats upon request, and Mary is the contact person for all of these. And there has to be an opportunity for members of the public to speak. We do have a sign-in sheet in the back, but there's, that's not a requirement, that's voluntary. So a member of the public, when we open it up to mics, a member of the public is allowed to come up and speak to the issue. We do have a time limit, and it is appropriate within Bagley-Keene to set a reasonable time limit. You may want to, in discussions, you may want to consider whether the time limit right now is 5 minutes. You may want to revisit that at some point. Special meetings. Special meetings are the other alternative. I mean, there is emergency meetings that generally would not apply to us. That's health and safety. Special meeting is at least 48 hours notice. In other words, it's not the 10-day notice requirement. Notice to news services on internet and to anyone who has requested notice called by the chair. First item of business must be a finding of hardship or a need to protect the public interest according to one of the statutory purposes. In other words, there's a list of reasons you can call a special meeting, and that it has to fit within one of those. Pending litigation, that includes our appeals, proposed legislation, disciplinary action. Emergency meetings, as I said, these normally would not apply to us. It would be work stoppage, health and safety, crippling disaster. And at least 1 hour telephone notice to local papers and probably the internet, and though it's not clear in the statute, but certainly since everything else is posted on the internet, I would imagine we would keep with our custom and practice. I'm not sure how this would apply to us because we don't generally do health and safety issues, but if it came up, that would be 1 hour notice. Closed session, I need to change this slide. I'm sorry, it says everybody's favorite Bagley-Keene topic, and I don't think that's true. I think you probably have other favorites. I should poll you, but that might be a Bagley-Keene violation. So the general consideration that we always talk about is everything's open, transparent. It's one of our core values, accountability, which includes transparency. So everything is open, unless it's an exception that's specified in the statute, which we scrupulously follow. Investment decisions, again, it's pretty easy to figure these out. It's weighing the public interest in disclosure or transparency versus the public interest in beneficial investment of their money. So obviously, if we did our investment decisions in open session, it might compromise the value of the investment. Pending legal action, that is if there's exposure and a decision to be made on litigation, that obviously is something that we don't want everybody to know, especially the potential defendants. That is something that is closed. And then ongoing litigation, again, for strategy reasons and updates and settlements. And the important thing to remember about closed session is that closed session privilege and protection is the only protection for closed session discussion. There is no attorney-client privilege within closed session. So what happens is the closed session privilege takes over the attorney-client privilege. And so if the closed session privilege is somehow obviated or somehow done away with, there is no attorney-client privilege to fall back on. And then personnel matters, there's clearly a balance between privacy and the public's interest to know, and cases fall down on the side of privacy of the individual. And then, of course, it's specifically in closed session for deliberation decisions on appeal. Notice description of subject matter and statutory authority. So there is pending litigation, attorney-client privilege, legal opinion. So if there is the pending litigation, that is the one where, you know, there may be a decision whether or not, for the board, whether or not to sue someone, that requires something from me that it deserves to be under Bagley-Keene. Ongoing litigation does not. And then afterwards, when finished, general nature of what was discussed and any action taken. And the general nature of what was discussed is set forth in our agendas. So usually we report back and say if any action was taken. And then, of course, what I think is the original intent is that, you know, all meetings are open and there are limited exception. And again, the purpose for me is to provide a meaningful opportunity for public participation. And it can't be meaningful unless all those things are in place, such as notice, what the subject matter is, an opportunity, a physical opportunity to attend, and a physical opportunity to speak. And so we do adhere to those, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? I don't have one on Bagley-Keene, but it seems strange that none of our members of the public came back. Can we just double check that we don't have any signage outside that says it's closed?
There isn't. It's just because it was Bagley-Keene and they didn't feel there was any need for them to come back.
When I was clearing,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
when I was clearing the room for closed session, several of our delightful constituents
Oh,
asked
no,
me.
here's Sandy, they're coming back. Hi, guys.
Okay.
Oh, you're in the cry room, huh? Thank you. Thanks, Brian. All righty. Moving on, board input for fiscal year 13-14 work plan. Jack?
So this is just a round one for input, and then we'll have the second discussion when everyone's here in July. You know, much of this is carryover year to year because you have a lot of normal processes as the board to go through relative to budgeting and oversight. But I wanted to flag two areas for you. One is stemming from the earlier discussion around Business Renew. We'll have a greater intensity of discussions throughout the year around that project and its progress. So I think you should expect more board time around that discussion. The second is around regulation development. We only have one regulation listed here. It is a hardy regulation. Don't be deceived by its innocuous title. This is really defining what counts for compensation that goes into the pension. And we've had various guidance on that in the past, and we felt it was time to elevate this into a formal regulation. I know you were doing a similar process, I think, at CalPERS around compensable compensation and credible compensation, and I think that was a lively discussion you've had over there. So we're beginning that process, and we will have to work with stakeholder organizations and all the things that you do to to do a regulation like that that affects the membership. So that one I've placed on your agenda, and that one will take much of the year. Because we'll have to have a couple bites at that discussion. But I wanted to mention that we have asked our staff, and Ed's legislative unit, we've kind of broadened their title to incorporate also kind of a regulatory development group that works with our legal department. And we have asked our business areas, rather than just think of bills that need to be done during the year, that to scratch their heads to see, do all the things that we have in statute or that we normally think of in statute, should they really be laws, or should we be thinking in terms of a more regulation approach to things here? It does seem like we may have micromanaged the system a bit through a statutory construction. So although we just have one reg on here, we want to just think about our overall balance of issues, given that we're doing business renew, thinking through business process changes that might come from that. It's the perfect time to think, where's the balance between statutes and regulation for the organization? Right now, it's extraordinarily unbalanced. It's 95-5 in favor of statutes. And so, again, I think it's time to kind of, right?
Yeah, we only have two regulations, penalties and interest. And
There's a couple more that.
There's elections. There's a few. There's
a couple more, but not many. But Brian has a regulatory background, so I think his voice will be helpful in helping us get the right balance around this. So we're going to work with our business areas to think about that. So I wanted you to consider that. And then I know Paul wanted to talk a little bit about the funding and what we might do around that. So I'll defer to you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking, talking to Jack about possibly something else that we could be doing, that given that the highest priority is to address the funding of the system, and obviously we don't have ourselves direct control over that. But I think the conversation that we had this past year with the work on the SCR 105 report and the reception it got, did a lot, I think, to raise an understanding of the needs of the system and the importance of doing the funding. And I was just wondering if there was some way that we can, continue to be a part of that conversation. And in particular, I think perhaps the question of the need for funding is probably better established now than in the past. But the urgency, the question of what happens if we delay taking action too long is maybe something that we could be looking at a little bit more, because that wasn't so much really what the SCR 105 analysis was, and I think that we set a really great precedent for really excellent work on that. So that was just something that I thought we could think about in a cooperative way with, as I think SCR 105 was, with all the stakeholders and with the legislature and with the governor's office, in terms of saying, we need to solve this problem, but keep up our side of sort of the dialogue and our insights into it.
Yeah, I think, obviously a lot of things have gone well in terms of legislative reception. That never ends, the education that we have to do over there. Once you get to the end, we start over. But the reception has been good. The editorials have been strong from the media. The LAO and the auditor's office have all properly, I think, diagnosed the issue. So I think we're all in the wedding room, and the audience is here, and we're at the altar, but we're not ready to.
Not married yet?
I'm not married yet to the solution, but we're close. But then the question is, what happens if the groom doesn't show up, and what are the consequences of that? So we could give better financial definition to that, because it's certainly a legitimate question. And I think also possibly you might, because the board's changed a bit, we might ask our attorneys to go back and look at some of the legal consequences if in fact, I'm not saying this because it will happen, but if in fact it was a solution 2 or 3 years out, does that change the legal advice the board received as well around your obligations? So there's probably a legal piece to it. There's probably a better way that with deeper precision we can define the cost of waiting 2 or 3 years to indicate how that severity changes. And so we can definitely do that
Okay, anybody else?
So
Between that and the reg, that's probably pretty heavy.
Yeah,
the-
so I'll add that to the work plan. We'll have another discussion when the rest are here in July.
All right.
Thank you.
So then we come to items referred by committee for board decision. We didn't have any of those? Or at least the ones we haven't had any that come to us that we need to take any further. We've already taken action on the ones that have come. New business and review information requests. We just have the pension 2 policy coming back to us. Is that right, Jennifer?
I also have the request to follow up on the delays on the project,
Oh, okay.
one of the projects. I'm sorry, I didn't write down which one, but I think it was
Data
Mr.
prep
Callahan wanted
and-
to know. Yeah, a little bit more than just the yellow.
And I think we had that coming back in September. And Chris, you know how much in depth that we would like to have that then?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Any feedback, additional feedback, feel free to share.
Okay. Brad?
And just one additional piece on the compensation item for July, I requested that McLaughlin.
Breakdown of the aggregate.
Right, there you go, thanks.
Super. Alrighty, anything else on that? Then draft agenda for the next meeting?
I just want to, again, Richard, I don't know if you'll be in the board for July or not, but I just want to make sure you know how it kind of rolls there. It's such a different meeting for us, but the chairs of each of these committees really will chair a short item going through the work plan for the year for the board's activities. So we actually move through each committee in succession in July and saying, does this feel right for the priorities, and do we have the right resources to support initiatives or projects or ideas? So we go through every committee, kind of finalize those, and once we get through that, then Robin, as our CFO, kind of reviews what the budget is that we have for the coming year, and then we'll provide you a kind of a comprehensive list of initiatives and objectives for the system as a whole, and the whole executive staff will be here kind of at your disposal to do that. And then and that goes through the entire organization's activities. And so that's really the heart of the regular meeting. We're not really, unless there's some business that has to be caught up with, that's it. And then we do an investment committee, and then as part of that, our investment staff is running through kind of the environmental scan and the game plan for each of the asset classes and their business plan for the year. So it's again, it's the planning part of the year.
And Jack, where do we want to put the compensation committee's report from April?
Oh, I'll put it in maybe after we get through the work plans or
Okay.
somewhere in there. Yeah. We'll figure out I'll get timing on the call too. If there's a London connection, I'll have to
Right.
figure that out. That might affect where we are.
Okay.
I think that's
Any-
it there. I don't see anything else unusual.
Okay. Well, then I'll say we came back from closed session. Seems we didn't say it before. Talk litigation, but we have no action to report. And do any of you that are next door want to come in and make a statement?
Or anyone in here.
Then John's here. Any statements from the public? Give them a couple minutes in case, they want to come over. Think not? They're still so intrigued with the Bagley Keene stuff, they can't break out of the door? I hope they're laughing over there. Alrighty, then we will say this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.